Alright, hey everyone, I'm swordsmankirby. I'm going to be running Kirby the Amazing Mirror 100%. Basically, Amazing Mirror is a Metroidvania kind of non-linear exploring kind of game. Very different from a lot of most Kirby games. But I'll explain that as we go along. Set. And go. Okay, so the beginning of this starts out with a little bit of an intro area that sort of teaches you about some core mechanics. And then it'll drop you into the maze after we get to this part. Okay, so this is some kind of multiplayer feature where the AI Kirbys would help you out, or player-controlled characters, but we can actually jump past it with a precise jump. Okay, good. So, in a lot of Kirby games, when you combine two enemies that have abilities, you get what's called a mix. And there's this roulette wheel that starts and all the abilities flash by. For the most part, timing, like stopping the roulette wheel on a specific ability, is a 4-frame window. So, very glad to get that. There are no wheel enemies early on, so right now what we're doing is that we're making our way to the first boss, King Golem, and it's pretty linear and not much exploration that you can do just yet. Oops, excuse me. In this game, any damage causes you to lose your ability. Floating up is kind of slow, so whenever possible you can actually huff and jump off of platforms. And that's actually faster. And really, whether or not that works depends on the Kirby game's physics itself. For example, in Nightmare Dreamland, the Kirby game that's probably most similar looking to this one, it would not be faster to do something like that. So a little bit about wheel. In this game, you can jump while you're in wheel form. So that's incredibly useful for navigating. Compared to Nightmare in Dreamland, it's like it follows Kirby's Adventure mechanics, where you cannot jump out. You'll notice that I'm pressing some of these big switches and different doors open up. These switches are basically like really big shortcuts to help you navigate throughout the maze. And in 100% you need to hit all of them anyways, not just because it's faster, but it actually counts towards completion on the file. For example, in 80% you would not need to hit all of them. First off, because you don't even explore the entire map, but second of all, some shortcuts are just simply not helpful. This big switch right here pretty much unlocks the rest of the game. Without pressing it, you can't really progress to most of the areas. Alright, here's our obligatory Wispy clone. Pretty easy. And after this cutscene, I'm actually going to do a soft reset. Normally what would happen after Kirby defeats a boss is that they'll dance for a little bit and then go back. But if you soft reset, you can actually continue on quicker. And since stone doesn't really help us for movement, it's pretty much just good for attacking, there isn't really a need to keep it after the boss. So we can reset, and conveniently enough there's a wheel enemy for us to take with that shortcut that we just opened up. So this game is highly non-linear, and the route has been evolving over the past, like, decade or so. The first 100% run of any kind was done by Mug. It was a tool-assisted speedrun. And it featured sort of an initial route. Some of it was maybe not the most efficient way about doing things, and other things are just sort of, what we say, tasks only. So, a lot of the work was done early on by a runner named Regiment for trying to, make the run more sort of human viable, and also just to find just pure routing improvements. But what's required for 100%? I mentioned the switches earlier. Of course, beating the game, like beating all the bosses and things like that, would count towards that. The main other thing is, well, two things. One is opening every chest in the game, and also visiting every room. A lot of people seem to think that because the game has a flag for it, that going through every door would be part of 100%, but it turns out not to be the case. There's certain doors that will just remain, and you can tell if you went through a door based on whether or not it's flashing. Alright, here's a little bit of a skip for a puzzle. Mini allows you to go through these little holes, I guess, and there's supposed to be a fancy way of doing that, involving one of the enemies that steals your ability, but if we're fast enough, we can actually just discard it, move the block, and then re-inhale it. Right now, this early part kind of opens up a lot of the map at once. You'll notice that I'm actually pressing several switches. I'll be pressing several switches throughout this segment. Because the game allows you to easily go back to the central area, the hub room, that's sort of, from there you can go to any of the other areas. The run is divided up into what we call segments. So basically, a segment is something that you start in the hub room, do something, and then come back to it in some form. Whether that's from soft resetting, there's like a phone home button, and sometimes just walking back into the hub room. Those would define what we call a segment. So the run is divided up into roughly like 30-something segments, and there are actually many, many different equivalent orders that you can do it in. So the order that a lot of people choose is just based on personal preference. The main idea behind wheel movement is that you're actually invulnerable when you're in it, except when you're turning around. And of course, if you bonk into a wall, you come out of wheel, things like that. But the main optimization here is avoiding what we call hit lag. You'll notice that every single time I hit an enemy, there is a little bit of damage that is being done. Sorry, a little bit of a sound effect that plays. And so you're trying to minimize that. Every single time you hear something like that, you lose roughly 0.05 seconds every single time you hear that sound effect. Thanks, Chow. Thanks, TG. Thanks, Meow Tactic. Yeah, if anyone in chat has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Okay, so we've actually hit 4 switches on just this one segment. And we're going to be making our way to our second boss, which is Mega Titan. Thanks, JVC Pro. That chest there pissed me off because there's a marathon run where I missed that one because I was distracted by something else that's going on involving the AI Kirbys. And ultimately someone had to help me out to remember which one I missed. Oops, this is a lot of hit lag. That's okay. Yeah, wheel is by far the best horizontal movement in this game, and it's very convenient that once you've opened up the map a little bit, there's always a wheel enemy for you to take right at the start. Oops. I mean, chat's moving slowly enough, but feel free to donate. Alright, so this is Mega Titan. And the first phase, you need to electrocute him. And the way you do this with wheel is to push him into the electric fence on the sides. With a precise hit, you'll notice that I started at the right side of the room, but then knocked Mega Titan to the right. With a precise wheel and jump, you can actually hit him backwards. Okay, so the one exception to the soft resetting after bosses rule is Mega Titan, because it's the only one that you actually do with wheel. It turns out that waiting out the dance actually turns out to be faster than resetting and then grabbing wheel again. Yeah, wheels are, in terms of like sort of how the route is set up, wheel, like whether or not you have wheel is important in determining the order. You want to backtrack into that room with the wheel enemy as little as possible. Oops, I'll just play it safe here. Basically, taking any damage underwater would be really bad. You just lose wheel and not really have a way of getting it back. Alright, so this is Boxy. Luckily getting some good luck here. Boxy can sort of hide in the corner. As I was saying earlier, if you turn around with wheel, you're vulnerable, so mini bosses in the corner are not good. Alright, an interesting mix setup here. Unlike Nightmare and Dreamland, for example, once you defeat an enemy, it actually stays on screen for a little while. So even when it's defeated, you can like sort of juggle in the air for a little while. And that actually allows for a lot more mix setups that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. Basically, you're attacking them to force the bodies of the enemies to be closer together for you to inhale both of them at the same time. So for that one, you want to mix for either UFO or fire. Mix on the way to the Vitality. I have no idea which one that is. Yeah, so basically UFO allows us to hit the bomb block and then avoid having to circle around the entire room. Alright. There are a couple places where you just duck in and out of a room because that counts as visiting it. And, for example, there's no chest in it, so there's no need to go any further. Nope, sorry. Yeah, cannons are a little bit weird. You would think that, when you go into a cannon, you're perfectly centered, but you're actually not. You can actually fire out quicker than that before you reach the middle. So here are these maybe like smaller kinds of shortcuts that are controlled by levers. Levers, for all intents and purposes, are basically like chests. At least they're coded up like chests. So the way that the file counter works is that it allocates a certain percent to each type of thing that you can get. So for example, bosses, there are 8 regular bosses, so they count for 8%. And it's like basically separate file counters going on at the same time. So for example, you could pick up a chest and it'll increment by 1%, and then enter a room that'll increment it by another %, even though there are tons of rooms and tons of chests. Okay, alright, whatever. There are 2 different ways of hitting the switch, one with fire, one with ice. That's all for now for that one. You'll notice that there was like another door that was leading somewhere. It turns out that that does not count as an extra room with these big gold game doors. Alright, so that's Peppermint Pals. I always thought it was funny that you just like go in and out of it, and then that's the whole thing. But in reality, you're taking sort of back entrance in the Peppermint Palace. A lot of these switches, you know, for example, Peppermint Palace has 2 switches, and they're sort of linked in a chain like this. So the outer one, you hit a switch and that gives you a door to the inner one. And then, oops. And then the inner one has a door to the hub room. So oftentimes when you can set up this way, you want to go from the outer one and then hit both of those switches at once. Yeah, the goal games are no fun, even casually, I would say. Thanks, Green Kirby. Yeah, the AI Kirbys, they're usually, you know, if you play this game multiplayer, which I would not recommend doing, they would be like human controlled. But the AI ones just sort of wander around randomly, and except for like 2 spots where we need their help a little bit, they almost always just like get in your way. As you can see, the game's starting to lag a little bit, and that's purely due to the AI Kirbys. That one that we saw earlier. Terrible. Okay, I'm just gonna call them, and hopefully that'll get rid of the lag a little bit. Nope, it made it worse. Very cool. I swear that, like, that this happens to me more frequently during marathon runs than anything else. Like regular attempts, usually it's okay. But somehow, whenever I do a marathon run of this game, I have to deal with that crap. Yeah, funny how these mini-bosses, you don't actually need to defeat them. You just reveal the door behind them and then leave. Alright, simple UFO enemy. And we're just going to fully charge up that shot even before we enter the fight. So, you have to charge it up anyway, so you might as well not trigger the fight yet. Alright, here's another mix setup. Luckily I got that 1 tile gap pretty quickly. Sometimes it can be kind of a mess. So, hammer mix is nice because, well, it allows us to hit that peg right there, but it's also going to be useful for the next boss that we encounter. Okay. Yeah, a lot of enemy patterns are random, so I'm trying to be a little bit careful here. So hammer, the idea here is that we want to do many of these like full charges as we can. 3 of them to be precise. Fortunately, I got bad luck. There's basically just like one really nice pattern for that fight. Unfortunately, I didn't get it. That's okay. So the idea behind, as I mentioned, there are lots and lots of different orderings that you can do. I think there are lots of permutations of the segments. But one thing that I've tried to do with this, with what I currently do, is to try to group the areas together. So you notice I did a lot of Peppermint Pals. Now there's going to be a lot of stuff in Rainbow Route and things like that. So hopefully it's a little bit more coherent. Back in the day, you know, back in the day, it was just like literally, it just felt like a completely random order. There was like no, it was just all randomly assorted, and in my opinion, more difficult to memorize because of that. This is the most difficult pattern. But the idea here is that the double star doesn't actually kill, despite what it looked like, but it actually hit Batterfire twice because Batterfire is moving to the right. So, like once you hit something, the double star's hurt box sort of deactivates for a little while. But then, since Batterfire is moving to the right, it actually was still in contact with the double star when the hurt box reactivated. Like it's hit twice. We're going to be doing something similar for this upcoming mini boss as well. Yeah, just general thing in Kirby games, you know, double stars do more damage than single stars. Some games even have more than more than double stars, like triple stars and things like that. Okay, we're gonna do a neat little setup for a double star. Okay, and here's Boxer. Same idea here. The getting hurt tries to manipulate Boxer into moving to the right. And once again, similar to the Batterfire fight, Boxer will get hit twice by the double star. Fighter is kind of a cool ability, but unfortunately it's actually been almost entirely routed out of the run now. It's pretty much just in Batterfire. It used to have a more prominent role, but people used to do it here. There was another spot where it was useful, but nowadays it's been routed out. That's cool because you actually have some faster than walking type movements. Okay, so now comes a relatively notorious section for runners. This is what, at least in my splits, is called the Smash Tour. It involves the Smash ability. So right now, just backtracking a little bit. In this room, there's a fork, and we're going to take the right path this time. Alright, I need to really need to clear my throat. Okay, so here's the mini boss that gives Smash Master Hand. I don't think my star would have been enough. And it gives a Smash ability. So Kirby's melee moveset, a couple of moves are taken from that. Master Hand is kind of unique within mini bosses in that Master Hand only has an active hurt box when it's doing an attack. Otherwise, you know, you can stand in it just as you would in the Smash series. That's really useful for something like Wheel. Normally speaking, we have to be careful about when we turn around, because you know if we turn around, we're vulnerable, so we're going to take damage from the bosses. But in the case of Master Hand, we can actually be a little bit more aggressive because of the lack of active hurt box. Okay. Those fishies can be a little bit... but luckily it's okay. Alright, so this is a place where you would actually call the AI Kirbys, and they would help you big inhale this block. So just like a lore thing. Okay, nice, I got that glitchy jump immediately. In the story, Dark Meta Knight splits up Kirby into 4. So each individual Kirby has sort of a weaker inhale that can't move a big block like that. So, but if you have them together, it's like the original power of Kirby, and they'd be able to move those heavy metal blocks. But you know, we basically circumvented calling the AI Kirbys. It's actually harder to get them to inhale it than one would expect. Like, the AI Kirbys in certain rooms will have pre-programmed behaviors, but even with that, it's hard to get them in the right spot for moving that block. Ooh, nice lag. Okay, we were here before, but this time we're going to take this path. There are actually 3 paths that you can take, and a very recent route change due to a road named Demolition found that you can actually just do this whole thing in 2 trips as opposed to 3. And as a result, that saves something like over 30 seconds, which was a massive find. There aren't too many of these like really big jumps in terms of routing, and in fact, like in the 3 years prior to that, pretty much nothing changed in the route. Okay, whoops. I didn't mean to jump in that cannon. That's okay. There was like one very, very minor change, but then Demolition found that nice route change. So in the olden days, you would phone home right here, but we're actually going to continue on. And what's, I guess one reason why this route change wasn't discovered for a long time was that this looks very inefficient. It looks like this room is really, really long. But, the act of saving a trip more than makes up for that. Okay, once again, have to be super careful not to lose Smash underwater here. It's a relatively rare ability. You can only get from Master Hand or mixes, so we do want to keep it where we do have a lot more to go with it. Alright, Gobbler. So, one of those attacks, Stone. One thing you could do if you didn't have to keep Smash is that you can actually puff underwater to damage Gobbler. But in our case, we do have to keep it, so we will be waiting out this dance. This actually turns out not to be the most optimal way of doing this. But probably the safest way to keep it, I guess. But yeah, that Kirby dance, each time you have to see one, it's like 3 or 4 seconds versus resetting. But if you're keeping an ability, it's worth it. Ooh, okay. I got a little bit lucky there. I got a nice pattern from Battle Fire. Smash is great for attacking, especially any kind of hammer thing. So for that mini boss, Battle Fire goes down to 4 hammer spins. The neutral A attack, it's with B, but Kirby's Smash melee like neutral A attack is incredibly useful for clearing out enemies. It's a relatively fast attack, and there's one enemy in particular that I'll mention later on, where neutral A happens to be like the best attack for it. Alright, we've been here before, but there are these chests that we didn't pick up last time. The final cutter cuts, so we're able to get that. And then also the hammer and stone would be able to break these pegs. So the only thing that Smash can't really do, besides like things like mini, things like that, is light fuses. So there's no fire elements to hammer. Okay, I'm just going to try to outrun the UFO. Okay, so that was relatively smooth. Okay, this enemy coming up right here, this is called Droppy. If you get too close to it, it will steal your ability. And, for example, if you try to attack it with hammer, it would steal your ability, like, while you're, like, mid-attack. But for whatever reason, neutral A, it cannot affect you. Alright, I got a very nice pattern from Fan. The stone, if you manage to connect with it twice, that's part of the reason why stone is so good, is because you can actually get multiple hits from a single attack. You manage to connect twice, it does 2/3 of Fan's damage, and if you do a standing... I don't even know what you call it, but like the side B on the ground with the hammer, that'll do the remaining 1/3. So I got very lucky. Sometimes, actually most of the time I would say, Fan just sort of camps around while you're in the stone form, like right on top of you. So if you unmorph, then you immediately get grabbed or something like that. What? Whatever. I have no idea what I'm doing. In this room, it's kind of tricky if you're doing this casually. These cutters, they're like basically like boomerangs, right? And so if you jump over it, it'll go behind you. And there are certain bomb blocks that you actually don't want to hit because it'll lock you out of getting certain chests. But luckily for us, you know, we're cutting stuff using Final Cutter instead of the Cutter ability. Alright, coming up soon. Why did I... completely unnecessary slide. Alright. Not so commonly known thing about golem enemies in this game is that depending on their attack, they'll give you a different ability. In this case, if it's rolling towards you, get wheel. Alright, good luck for the Frosty, staying away from the edge of the map, edge of the room. And so this is what's going to take us to Candy Constellation. There are a couple ways of entering, and in older routes, a lot of these other options were explored, but it turns out that this way, which is done in 80% as well, happens to be the fastest. So route changes involving Candy Constellation, just like sort of entering it, saved like, I would say probably saved over a minute compared to the original task. Whoops. So Candy Constellation is shaped like the Big Dipper constellation. So the bottom part, the ladle or this bowl part, is a loop of 6 rooms. And the idea behind a lot of this is that in order to progress, you actually want to move from right to left. But first off, we're going to visit all the rooms in this loop. You'll notice that for 2 of them, whoops, 2 of them I didn't really do anything in them. I just exit and entered. No need to go around an entire loop. Just need to snippet at the ends. So now as we move from right to left in the previous room to this one, the opening up top to get us to the switch is, is available. If you move from left to right, you always hit that bomb block and it'll block the top entrance. Another fan. That one's fairly quick. I think the game is a little bit nasty with regards to some of these secrets. So there is a map that you can get for each of these areas, but sometimes they're like intentionally misleading. For example, it'll say like, oh, there's like a chest in this, but there are 2 different ways of entering that room, and those 2 parts of the room are completely disconnected from each other. So things like that, where, I don't know, the game's like purposely trying to mislead you in a lot of ways. So the maps are only helpful up to a point. I think casually, like even finding the map, it is kind of tricky. So there are 9 different areas in this game. So right now I'm in the last one. Areas 2 through 9 all have a boss somewhere in them, and then Rainbow Route is sort of like the hub area. There is a hub like that sort of connects up all the different areas together. Okay, here's a bomb block that you're supposed to hit with beam. We're actually going to do it in a little bit of a different way. Do this wall instead. Alright, and again through that same area. There are a lot of sort of one-way paths and things like that. So I'm going through here for like the 3rd time in a row. There are a lot of one-way paths. Instead of being like a lot of interconnected rooms, some parts of it are very tree-like, so there is a lot of backtracking that you'd have to do. I have no idea what I'm doing right now. But one thing that, okay, I mentioned earlier that multiplayer is really bad. It's really bad because of all the lag that you get. Like, even with 2 players, it lags considerably. Like, people don't really, people who haven't tried it don't really know, like, how bad it really is. Like, truly do not know how bad it is. But one thing that's improved upon in a multiplayer speedrun is that it can cut down on the backtracking. Because there's one mechanic that we haven't seen yet, which is calling the other Kirbys. That would help you cut down on backtracking quite a bit in a multiplayer speedrun. There's actually been a 4-player 100% speedrun done by a couple of Japanese runners who, at least as far as I can tell, don't run the game otherwise. So, one day I'd like to sort of dissect that run. You know what? I will call the AI Kirbys for this fight. Seem to have reasonable looking abilities. Nope, not letting them pick it up. They did not help. It's okay though. So in this game, in 80%, you start out at 6 health, and then there are 4 chests that give what TG was mentioning earlier, vitality upgrades. So you're gonna end up at 10 health, and for this particular segment, it's actually very helpful. I already screwed up some of the damage boosts, but very helpful to have extra health to tank hits. Yeah, so here's the thing: if they have like a remake of this game, it'll be on some modern engine that you know, wouldn't be as fun to play through, in my opinion. And one thing I really like about this game is the physics engine. If you're talking about re-releasing the original Amazing Mirror, I don't think people would like that very much. Wow. Oh well. I think it's like a lose-lose situation. Either you get the original multiplayer, or you get a modern physics engine. You know, they removed the AI Kirbys and made the what's usually like a 4-player thing or multiplayer thing doable with 1 player. You know, that'd be great. This is Molly. I got the throw ability. I'm actually, for the most part, not throwing, but actually holding the projectile behind me and having it run into Molly. That happens to be the best way of attacking Molly. So I got an okay fight. I have 69%. I can move on to the next part. So at least in my route, and a lot of players seem to object to it, right now is where I put Mustard Mountain. And so Mustard Mountain is probably one of the most difficult parts of the run. Whoops. And it's partially because it will involve a lot of missile movement, which I guess it seems like we haven't actually seen yet. I totally forget with the route changes whether or not missiles showed up here. Showed up yet? Oh! Okay. Okay, good. So this mix, 2 sparks, if you just let it go, gives you missile. So missile is a kind of hard to control ability. It looks like it's, it's only got 8 directions, but there's a lot of sideways drifts with it if you're not careful. So, missile movement is actually quite precise. And ideally, you'd like to do these like 45-degree turns with it. It sort of minimizes the amount of sideways drift without costing too much speed. Okay, whatever. Turns out that There's a missile copy essence right here. So one thing about missile is that when you exit it, there's a huge amount of recoil. That, for example, if you're going forward, it's actually more optimal to turn around and have the recoil bounce you forward. And the difference in recoil makes up for the fact that you have to spend the time to turn around, which is quite bizarre. Okay. Got lucky on those chip enemies. Okay, this is another significant piece of backtracking. I'm just gonna drop it, whatever. I'm fed up with using missile there. So, this is only one path in that previous room. And we'll have to come all the way back in just a second. Oops, whatever. None of the AI Kirby's there, otherwise I would footstool off. Starting a superstar, you can sort of jump off of friends for a bigger jump. Okay, so pre-programmed behavior, the AI Kirby's will stand on switch for me as I go through. Kind of weird that that's there because they don't do that in other spots. So for example, if you recall AI Kirby's here, they would not help you out. Which is unfortunate because this one, if they were to do that, would actually save more time than the other one. But alas. This time I didn't guess right. Chip enemies are kind of annoying, especially in this room. I'm taking a bunch of intentional damage. People always wonder like why I do that. But you know, when you lose a PB run because you died for some really bizarre edge case, you would too. Whoops. Oh well. Huh. I'll show off the footstool next time. Ooh. Okay. Let's have a mix here. You know what? I should have practiced this before starting today. That's okay. I'll have another shot at it. So I'm going to purposely damage myself because this fire would actually burn you and stun you for longer. Alright, here's the footstool. Alright, there we go. Much better. And it's, once again, the fully charged UFO goes through walls. We hit a bomb block that's out of reach. So I mentioned earlier, you know, disappointing that fighter is no longer really in the route very much. I mean, it has that one use. But there's something you can do called Hadouken skip to hit that bomb block. Alright, Cupid, actually useful in the run. It cuts a string that's off screen right now. Well, let's get this chest. Gotta be careful here not to get stunned by any fire. Okay, not get lucky there. Child Kirby there can drop either a Maximum Tomato, 1-up, or Invincibility Candy. Invincibility Candy would be nice for Badfire, but unfortunately we didn't get it. But we had a decent pattern Badfire. Now is Kracko. Like I said, those double hits with stone are super effective. Okay, now I should have 80% my file. Let's see if I do. Okay, good. That should mean that I've gotten everything so far. Oops. Let me set that up. Didn't have my fingers ready. Alright, good. UFO's got good vertical movement, but the important part here is that it'll be able to light fuses with a laser. Alright, now there's even more missile movement here. We're just going to be using it. The reason why we use it is because bomb blocks, like normally if we could we would use wheel for movement, that would be our preferred choice, but bomb blocks cannot be broken by wheel, unlike in some other games. Oh, sorry, metal blocks cannot be broken by wheel, but missile can. That's why we use it here. Oops, come on. Get in there. What? I'm very confused by what's going on here. The enemy patterns looked off for whatever reason. Oh well. It's gonna make our way through here. So at the end of this room would be a warp start to Candy Constellation. Like I said, the one in Peppermint Pals that I went through earlier happens to be the most efficient way about going up there. But as you can see, we had missile there, and a lot of Candy Constellation was done using wheel. Okay, haven't really mentioned these Mira enemies. Oh no, okay, whatever. But you defeat them to uncover the door behind them. But if you spook them, and what that usually means is moving too quickly near them. Then they disappear and they take the door with them, and you have to reset the room in order for them to come back. Now, that seems kind of counterintuitive considering I just bowled straight into them with missile, but it's purely in terms of your running speed before you entered missile, as like how fast you're approaching the mirror. So kind of weird quirk, but it allows us to go into the mirror really quickly with missile. Sometimes that Sparky can be a huge pain. almost letting it run out, but it's actually the second last one. And even though the window for hitting it is like really wide, it really slows down, I have been known to miss that mix. It's like a quarter of a second window, but just sometimes the nerves get to you, even though it's objectively very easy. Oops. Alright, so this is Rash Ruins. Probably the last area that we haven't really seen yet in this run. Kirby is great upper body strength. Climbing down ladders is faster than falling. So this is also kind of a nasty puzzle, in the sense that like you get that chest by failing to be fast enough. Normally, like you'd have to drop down and be because you missed that combination of two switches. But it turns out that the game leaves one of the switches on so long that you're unlikely to actually do that. Alright, so we're going to go back into Rash Ruins, but it's actually going to be through the last shortcut. The one that we just opened up, and now we're back in. Yeah, so these two switches here, they're actually left open for quite a long time. Alright, that was a nice and clean master hand fight. Aw. If you're fast enough, you can despawn the enemy. What? Okay. I don't remember the last time I took damage there. It's okay. See you later, Shadow Kirby. Yeah, I don't think anyone really knows exactly the reason why Shadow Kirby spawns or doesn't spawn. But it's consistent at the very least. At least for most people. Alright, so that completes the mirror. Now we're ready to go to the final boss. Actually, just kidding. There's a long cutscene that plays there that basically says like, oh, the Meta Knight that you've been seeing is not the real Meta Knight, etc, etc, etc. But since we've watched a part of that cutscene, the game thinks that we've actually watched the whole thing. So the next time we go in there, we'll be able to skip that cutscene, and it's like a 20+ second cutscene, so it saves a good chunk of time. In 100%, doing that cutscene skip, like routing around that, saves about 13 seconds or so. You know, relatively big chunk of time saved. And 80% saves about 8 seconds. That's because in 100% we have the luxury of doing other stuff, so we can quote-unquote set up what we would like to have for the final boss sequence. So one thing you notice that when I jumped in just now, the AI Kirby's joined me. I do not want them to join me. And also, I also entered without an ability, so I'd like to enter with an ability. Meanwhile, for 80%, you don't really have the luxury of doing that. You just have to go straight from the last boss into the final boss sequence. So we call this part right now Dark Mind Prep, so Dark Mind being the final boss. What that's going to entail is calling the AI Kirby's away, so conveniently we need them anyways for this part here, so this will get them out of the home room. And then we also need stone, so there's going to be a segment after this specifically dedicated to ending with stone. So previously, you know, that Molly boss, I saw that I was using throw for it. People used to enter the final boss sequence with throw. So a little bit unusual here that I'm phoning home even though I don't have an ability to keep track of. And that's because I do want to preserve the Kirbys away from the home room. And if I reset, they would come back to the home room. So here I got stone, so that's going to be one. Well, I'll enter the Dark Meta Knight fight with. Gotta be careful about these spikes. Kirby's hitbox is not really that big, so relatively it's okay. I don't need to worry too much about running into spikes accidentally. Nice. Okay, got a little bit lucky with my positioning there. So we like to say that this is like the one useful glitch in the run. where if you float to the top and once you lose control, you're actually like a little bit off the ground, and that causes you to go into that portal a tiny bit faster. So that's the first phase of Dark Mind. Here comes the second one. The idea is the same as kind of like the Battlefire and the Boxer fight. You want Dark Mind to get hit twice by the double star. Purposely damaged myself there. Just so that star doesn't interfere. And whenever Dark Mind gets hit by damage, or at least like, it'll get stunned if you do enough damage. So for example, from a single double star, and it'll flinch backwards, causing him to get hit by the double star a second time. Okay. Dark Mind 3, hoping for a specific, nope, a specific drop. So each phase of Dark Mind, at least early on, there's like another color of a star shows up. So if I had a fire ice, like a red or blue star, I'd be able to hit that button immediately, this one right here. But because I didn't, I had to go around the room. That's okay. It's relatively rare. Okay, so Dark Mind 4. Each phase of Dark Mind has actually been increasing in health. This one, double star is not quite enough. That's good because it allows us to set up a mix. So the fourth star that is being added here, I'm getting some really crappy luck, is a green star. Or you can get 2 stars in that way. I got a green one anyways, but the green star gives you a mix and you can get UFO from it. And it's really, really important for the 5th fight that you have something that does like one big hit of damage. Like, good DPS is not good enough. You want something that does one big hit. Because the way that this fight works is that Dark Mind, you have to hit the eye. And once it gets hit by anything, it'll close it for like a second or two. Oh, I missed. Okay. I take full responsibility for that fight going poorly. Alright, so Dark Mind 6. You know, Kirby games nowadays, or I guess always, for a long time, have some kind of like space shooter at the end. And here's the one for this game. This one's really bad because Dark Mind 6 can move around however it wants. Can't stun it or anything. I'm actually getting pretty good luck here. Okay, so timing doesn't end quite yet. Need to check that we get 100%. So in this credits, you know, as just like one additional sort of Super Smash Bros. Melee reference, you can actually play this and continue shooting at Dark Mind, even though it's like already defeated, to rack up the score in the bottom right. But that actually introduces lag, so I don't really want to do that. But one thing I would do in like any percent runs is like purposely get 69. At the very, very end, it's like a 3-second time save to kill Dark Mind here. Otherwise, Dark Mind will explode by itself, but it takes a little while. Okay, so after this fade out, it should be 100%. Unless I missed something. Should be very sad. Alright, 109.52. Okay, so yeah, that's Kirby and the Amazing Mirror 100%. Yeah, just shout outs to all the Amazing Mirror runners for, you know, all the round improvements, all the different strat ideas and things like that over the years. But anything neat, cool, fun, or silly to show. I didn't really use it, but if you're playing this game casually, for example, after you beat Darkmind, you get permanent access to the Master Sword. We use the Master Sword as like just like a double star, like a double star ingredient. But the Master Sword is actually a lot of fun to play around with. Like, you move quite quickly. And this is kind of like a new game plus thing. You know, there are all those puzzles involving you know, blocks to break and things like that. But the Master Sword can pretty much do all of it. So if you want, like this part that we're doing here, you know, it's got its own final cutter. I guess I can just upstab it like that. But one thing that relatively unknown is that it does have a final cutter that you can use like this. And it's also very good for bosses and things like that. So if for example, you beat the game and you still haven't collected 100%, this can actually help out considerably. Makes things a lot easier in terms of exploration. But unfortunately, it doesn't count for 100% because in order to get that 100% screen, which is like the real end of 100%, if you were to complete the game and then collect everything, you'd have to go re-beat Darkmind in order for it to count. So if you were to miss anything, and the file counter is not exactly the most fine-grained progress meter. No, not exactly the most like fine-grained like progress meter. So, yeah, kind of a tricky part about learning this game for the first time. Okay, so yeah, I guess I guess I didn't really have any interesting things to show off. But you know, I just wanted to thanks Anasa for inviting me to this. You know, I'm always eager to show off Amazing Mirror 100%. So thanks for watching. You know, keep watching the rest of the marathon. And yeah, donate to the cause if you can. Thanks.